Like ours. We're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to go ahead and get started without Commissioner Sodick, and he can come in and join us before we get any votes. Today is October 12th, 2023. The time is 9:10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 8:10 Central Time. This is the duly called meeting of the Texas Low-Level Radioactive Waste Disposal Compact Commission. We are here today in lovely Burlington, Vermont, for our annual trip to Vermont. I will hopefully say this multiple times, but right on cue, there's Dick. I will say this hopefully multiple times, but we are so appreciative of the hospitality that everyone in Vermont has shown us. It is kind of the highlight of our year. It's a wonderful trip and it's a wonderful time. Both Commissioner Sodick and Commissioner Bradford have been very helpful, as has Deborah, in getting all this coordinated and providing us a lot of neat opportunities. Obviously, we enjoy the weather and we enjoy the foliage, so we appreciate it. Today's meeting is being broadcast via Zoom webinar. There is a link in the agenda that's been published to join. For those of you who have joined, if at any time today you need to speak, we would ask that you use the raise your hand function, which if you hover at the bottom of your Zoom, there is an option for that. And we will try to recognize you as soon as possible. I will now call the meeting to order and do a roll call. You see Commissioner Bradford, Commissioner Morris, Commissioner Sodick, the Vice Chairman, Commissioner Nyack, and on the line we have Commissioner Mundy and Commissioner Edwards. So we have full attendance today in a quorum. We thank you all for attending. We also appreciate everyone who's come here in person, and we would especially like to welcome Anthony Lashinsky, who is the Vermont State Nuclear Engineer and Decommissioning Coordinator. We appreciate your attendance. And again, thank you very much for your wonderful hospitality. I think a lot of us probably don't want to leave, but we promise we will. Do we have any other elected officials here in the room or online? I see all of our friends from TCQ, who we won't call out by name, but we appreciate their attendance. Do we have anyone here today from the press? I did not expect anyone, but I wanted to check. With that, I think we have gone through the first three items on our agenda, and we can go ahead and go to item 4, which is our public comment. Because we're in a foreign locale, obviously we will relax the rules about the sign-up sheets. So we'll start first with people here in person, and then we will get to anyone who wants to make a comment online. So is there anyone that would like to address the commission on a general matter that would be considered a public comment? And if you would, please come to the podium and state your name and who you're with, and then obviously be prepared in case we have any questions. Mr. Taylor.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Commissioners, Chairman Hurley, thank you for the opportunity to be here today and speak. And I've never been to Vermont before. It's a very lovely place. I can see why you want to have a meeting here every year, particularly this time of year. I'm Tommy Taylor. I work for Fasken Oil and Ranch in Midland, Texas. I'm the Director of Oil and Gas Development. I've worked for the Fasken family for a little over 38 years. I'm also the president of the Permian Basin Coalition of Landowners, Royalty Owners, and Operators, and the current chairman of the Permian Basin Petroleum Association, which is a oil and gas trade group that represents over 700 oil and gas companies and service companies and people that are in the business. Fasken has been part of Andrews County since 1913, almost the beginning of the county. Mr. Fasken was a barrister in Toronto, just west of here, and bought this property and settled it way back. And so we've been part of the Andrews community for a long, long time, 110 years. When waste control specialists came up with the idea of this pit in western Andrews County, they came around to everybody in the community and all the landowners, ranchers, and the commitment that they made to us was that this site would be limited the low-level radioactive waste, class A, B, and C, and that was it. There was a lot of concern about, well, what's next? It started as a wrecker pit and then was going to this. And people were concerned about that. And the county supported WCS with a bond election of $75 million. And that bond passed by 4 votes. So it was very controversial at the time. I finished high school in Andrews. My parents lived there a long time. I brought a contingent from Andrews. Some of them are members of our coalition. Some of them are just interested individuals that want to come and be engaged and learn more about this, which is great. But a couple of things I wanted to mention. Lately around the Texas Capitol, we've heard a lot of the representatives say that there's this message out that Fasken wants to put WCS out of business. That's my main topic today. And that is absolutely not true. The community committed to this waste, and WCS committed to doing, store it. And there was an agreement between Texas and Vermont and Andrews County on how it was going to be taken care of. And we're still all about it. We support their employees. They're good community people, and we don't have anything against them. But we're not in favor of bringing in high-level waste. And that was, from the outset, nobody wanted that waste. And we don't want greater class C waste. We don't want to change the playing field and move that from federal jurisdiction to state jurisdiction. So that's why we've been so engaged in this. We don't want to change the ground rules, what everybody agreed to by some legislative bill. We want to keep containerization. We want to keep arm's length transactions. Everything that we originally agreed to, we're still good with. We don't want to change that. And we need to stick to the deal. Just look what's going on around the world today with Ukraine and Israel and the Texas border. I don't know, you guys in Vermont hear about it. We have droves of people coming across the border. It's a crisis. And our border patrol are catching a lot of them, but they're not getting all these people. When Andrews was looking at diversification and talking to WCS, they were very concerned about, the future of Andrews. They thought the oil business was, a brownfield and we were going to be done. And before WCS started operating, the Permian Basin as a whole was producing less than 1 million barrels of oil a day and about 5 BCF of natural gas a day. That was, I don't know, a decade or so ago, maybe a little longer. Today, thankfully, the Permian Basin is producing 6 million barrels of oil a day and 21 BCF of gas a day. It's tremendous. It's changed the geopolitical environment around the world. That is half of our domestic oil and gas, oil production, not gas production, but oil production. So the Permian Basin represents the energy security for our country and for our allies abroad. And we need to protect that. And that's one of the reasons we're against bringing in higher levels of waste. As a committee, I would just say, I would like to encourage you to make sure WCS is transparent and keep the oversight over them, and hopefully that will foster that community trust that we need going forward. Thank you.
Mr. Taylor, can you give us a quick update on the litigation? If you know, I'm not.
This is Monica Perales. She's our corporate counsel, and she can update you.
I believe that ISP WCS most likely filed their appeal in the Fifth Circuit, asking for a rehearing. They probably did that around October 10th.
So what is the timeline on that?
Well, I don't know about the turnaround from the court, whether they're going to approve or deny, but they have made it clear that if the court does deny, then they're going to file an appeal with the US Supreme Court. Now there are various actions before the DC Circuit Court. That's different. That's not regarding the legality of issuing a license. That's regarding all the contentions, over 100 contentions that were raised. And so that is before the DC circuits right now.
One other question, and again, if you don't know this, I completely understand. How many acres do the Fascons own in Andrews County?
Currently, we own 165, a little more than 165,000 acres. That's for context, it's 255 square miles of range.
What percentage of the property in Andrews County is that?
It's over 13% of Andrews County.
Any other questions for Mr. Taylor? Commissioner Sawyer?
I guess I don't. You talk about energy security as a reason to keep getting off the fuel, but I guess I don't quite understand how that and the other things you said connect to keeping WCS from taking high level waste. I mean, I don't think I don't think that's gonna happen personally, but that I take it is one of your big problems. But I guess I'm not quite making the logical connection between what you do and what we in this county and equal the country and so on, and burying high level waste in Andrews County.
We're worried about several things. One is the transportation risk of high level waste. It will come right through Midland, and most of it will come through Midland, Odessa, and Monaghan. That rail system, we've been told by other people in the industry that probably not up to the task. We have a train derailment almost monthly on that track. We have lots of truck traffic going across it and lots of crazy truck drivers, and we have, as an oil industry, we have all our pipe, we have sand, we have mud chemicals, we have oil, other chemicals on that rail, and that would be number one, at the very least, a disruption. We worry about the water situation at WCS's site. The AOG aquifer system there. The antlers, part of that is in the pit wall at 13 feet at this site. And we drink water out of the antlers in Midland and Odessa. And we worry about that. We worry about terrorism, eco or otherwise. If this site is approved and the Holtec site is approved, that will be the storage center for all of the high level nuclear waste from all the power plants in the US. And we think that's a concern to site that in the middle of one of the largest oil fields in the world.
You mentioned, I'm sorry, Dick. You mentioned Holtec. You know what the status of it is?
Yes, sir. We filed in the Fifth Circuit against NRC's issuance of the Holtec license as well. And they filed a motion to dismiss and a motion to transfer to the DC Circuit. The Fifth Circuit said that they would take those issues up along with the merits. So I anticipate that we'll have a hearing maybe by next summer on Holtec as well. And if I may piggyback on what Mr. Taylor said regarding security, in 2018, I met with Raytheon security defense analyst, and he said that the energy grid and pipelines are always under threat. And he said if you store higher level nuclear waste than what you've already got out in Andrews, he said you just put a target on your back and you're gonna move up to number one. Because disruption of energy is what terrorists go after. Any sort of disruption is a win for them.
Is it your position that, the storage of high-level waste in canisters in 104 nuclear plants is a good idea? Is a permanent fix on that?
Not necessarily, but that is ever present and there's nothing I can do about that. But that is regulated. This has never been done. That is in buildings. It's got security. This is the consolidation and just of all of that out in the open. It's very different. It's never been done before, so there aren't regs to govern over that. And the NRC acted in a vacuum without consulting Homeland Security or Department of Defense.
But one of the things that we've always been worried about is they call it interim storage. And interim's not like a few years, it's decades. And we worry about the condition of the canisters over a long period of time. I think former NRC Commissioner Allison McFarland had talked about that. She said that she didn't think these canisters were suitable for storage over 100 years, a century. And and if we move it somewhere, it takes all the pressure off of Congress to solve this problem. And it's just going to sit there for perpetuity. We don't think that's a good idea.
Pardon my lack of understanding of the way your business works, but do you, well, you use, you were talking about water and you're concerned about water. Don't you use water in your operations?
Yeah,
In fracking and whatnot?
Yeah.
Yeah,
we use,
I mean, do you not use the kind of volumes that you're talking about with the WCS facility?
it's not, we do use a lot of water, but most people are using recycled water now, which water we actually produce. And then we reuse it to frac as we go along.
Mr. Taylor, Baskin doesn't use fresh water though.
No, that's true. On our ranch, we don't use any fresh water from the ground.
And there's a difference between usage and risk.
Between what?
Usage and risk.
And risk.
Risk to groundwater is what he was referring to.
And what's the difference? Pardon my ignorance on this.
Well,
We don't do a lot of drilling here.
we can expand on the risk to the groundwater by placing the nuclear waste there at the site versus usage, which is my client's practice not to use fresh water. Because they were ranchers first. There's conservation begins with ranchers.
But do you have any measure of how much water you do use and whether it's fresh water or other kind of water, brackish water or whatever? I mean,
Yeah, we could get you those numbers. We use a lot of water. But we clean it up from, it's finally in situ water that's coming out of the reservoir. And we take the iron out and we treat it with sulfates. And we reuse it. And if we use fresh water, we make it out of brackish water. We don't use any groundwater that you could drink or water cattle or something like that. We just don't do it because there's not that much. And if you don't have water, what's your ranch for? Particularly in the desert.
And I imagine that Mr. Taylor can also explain to you our meeting would be a rep from the IAEA regarding single-use land for the sort of activities that WCS is pursuing. And this is definitely not single-use land.
thank you.
Any other questions, for Mr. Taylor or Ms. Browse, before we let him go?
Actually,
I'm sorry, Mr. Lipinski, did you have a question?
yes, I do, and it's for Mr. Taylor. Mr. Taylor. I'm Tony Lashinsky. I'm with the state of Vermont and the Vermont State Nuclear Engineer. So much like Commissioner Sodick, I am ignorant of the petroleum production industry. So I do have one question, just for clarification. Any nuclear facility such as high-level waste disposal facility or a nuclear power plant has an exclusionary boundary, you know, an area that basically you cannot touch, you know, for security reasons. And listening to you, I realized that I never thought of that exclusionary boundary extending below grade. So my question is, with you know, the information you have available, would you expect that if you know, assume that there would be a high-level waste storage facility placed in Andrews County, would the exclusionary boundary prohibit you guys from, you know, getting oil out of the area, say, you know, maybe not within the footprint of the facility itself, but in a wider footprint for security purposes or due to security purposes?
I guess it could, it depends on the particular site. I'm not sure what how the mineral, who owns the minerals underneath the WCS site. At the Holtec site in Lee County, the state owns the mineral. And Holtec represented in their application that they had a lease use restriction condition where nobody could drill under it within 5,000 feet, basically. They did not have that. Okay. And so people can drill right underneath their site if there's oil production there, which is a concern.
Right. Okay. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
WCS condemned the minerals beneath their site. I'm sure they'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I.
Okay.
Well, that whole tech site's in New Mexico, right?
Right, Holtec site is probably 40 miles west from the WCS site, halfway between Hobbs and Carlsbad, New Mexico.
Any other questions, Mr. Taylor? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And just so we're clear, I wanted to state, we're obviously very interested in the high level issue. We are trying to watch it as closely as possible, but as a reminder, our jurisdiction is limited to low level waste. And so we don't have any direct role in it, but obviously we appreciate the information because we are very interested. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to make a public comment of a general nature? Anyone? Oh, yes, sir.
Good morning. My
Good
name
morning.
is Bob Stewart. I'm here representing the community engagement panel. And my goal here today is to continue to stay educated about what's happening in the nuclear industry in our community and broadcast that information to the community. Thank you.
We appreciate you being here, and we want you to know that if you ever need any kind of information or anything that you think we can help you with, please feel free to reach out anytime. Our staff, me, whoever, we definitely, we have a very strong commitment to the people of Andrews, and we understand that they are the people that are the most affected by both what we do and what WCS does. So we want to provide you guys all the information and all the support you need. So if you ever need anything, please let us know.
Thank you for your diligence. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Anybody else in person want to speak? Okay, I think Vern Rogers has raised his hand online. We'll bring him in and let him make a public comment. Vern, if you will unmute yourself, I think we'll be able to hear you.
Thank you, Chairman Hurley. In the August meeting, the Commission voted on 3 import applications from Energy Solutions and approved them. There was a delay in getting those issued and formalized after that vote, and I just wanted to express some gratitude publicly to Chairman Hurley and to Vice Chair Salzman for their support and helping behind the scenes to work through the challenges in the paperwork and getting those things finalized so that we could ship the waste and import them into Texas. So thank you very much. Just wanted to appreciate your support.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. I'm glad this meeting's recorded. We don't get many compliments, so we'll play this one back. Any other public comments? And I also wanted to note, since we started, Commissioner Bobby Janeka from the TCQ has joined us. We appreciate Commissioner Janeka joining us. He is our guru, so we appreciate him being present, and we appreciate all the support and input he and everybody at TCQ provides us. Any other public comments? Hearing none, I think we can move on to item 5 in our agenda, which is our report from Waste Control Specialist. And we have Mr. Dave Carlson with us.
Good morning, thank you. Let me start with the current fiscal year. The current fiscal year just started September 1st. And in compact disposals have been for this year 241 cubic feet and 75 curies. Out of compact 3,183 cubic feet and 29,004. That's just for 1 month. So let me go back to the prior fiscal year as well and say where we ended up in the prior fiscal year. So in compact in this Texas fiscal year 2023, we disposed of 16,664 cubic feet. That was 1,594 curies. Out of compact was 37,672 cubic feet and 105,397 curies.
Could you speak a little slower?
I certainly can, and I will do that, Commissioner. So the significance of those numbers from last year is, for example, out of compact, we had 37,672 cubic feet come in. We had 168,000 cubic feet approved by this commission. So what we received at the end of the year was about 22% approved by the commission. Additionally, I know that the commission had some concerns about volume and our construction schedule and so on. My projection earlier in the year was that we would have greater than 130,000 cubic feet in phase 1 still in place at the end of the fiscal year. Right now, we actually have 139,000 cubic feet in place at the end of the fiscal year, which is about 4 to 5 years worth of capacity in phase 1. Additionally, if you look at the curies disposed, 105,000 curies, that's versus the statutory limit of 275,000 curies. So that's about 38%. Or if we compare it to the 482,000 curies that were approved by this commission, it's about 22%. So I would say that it's very consistent with what we've seen in the history, that of what's approved by this commission, about 25%, both in curies and in volume, gets disposed simply because, I believe folks that generators that come to this commission, they want to be conservative in their estimates. Things happen that change their schedules and so on. We talk with them and try to make sure that what they put in is a reasonable amount, but they tend to overstate slightly because then they don't have to come back when they actually generate the waste and request a change to that. So our totals since inception, and that's through September 30th, are 311,111 cubic feet, or that's 3.5% of our licensed capacity. So licensed capacity is 9 million. We've disposed of a little over 300,000 cubic feet of low-level radioactive waste. Additionally, that's just over 600,000 curies, which is about 15% of capacity. But as we've discussed, most of the waste that we receive decays extremely quickly. And so we achieve a endpoint at some point where we simply won't increase in curies because it's decaying away so quickly.
So Dave, could I ask real quickly? So you said 600,000 curies. Is that decayed?
That's decayed.
Any idea what that, how many curies those would be undecayed?
I don't, but
I'd be
if
really
you look at the
curious.
compact waste facility, the majority is cobalt 60, so you can kind of back it up. And
Yeah, if you could perhaps talk to your staff, I'd be really curious to compare the actual decayed number to
Sure.
the originally received, because I think that as a health physicist, I'm really interested in that number, is what the quote average half-life is over the inventory that you've received today.
right, and the average half-life is going to be
Probably
quite short.
probably very close to cobalt 60. I'd be curious.
Yeah. It's over cobalt, but it's not by that much. Its inception, on that. So phase one constructed capacity is 450,000 cubic feet. I mentioned that, let's see, we used 311,000 to date, so that leaves 139,000 cubic feet, 31%. Again, that's greater than my projection was back earlier this year. At current rates, that's about 2.5 years of capacity. We don't expect current rates to continue, so I would expect it's more like 4 to 5 years capacity in phase one. However, phase 2A is nearly complete at this point. Several of you had the opportunity to tour phase 2, 425,000 cubic feet. Right now, we are finishing the concrete liner of that and should have all of that work done by Thanksgiving. Then we submit paperwork to TCQ. TCQ has been monitoring the progress of that and the paperwork throughout the process. But additionally, when we have the completion package in place, they'll take the time to review that as well. That could take 2 or 3 months, I suppose. And so we expect to have phase 2A in service at the end of February. At that point, we'll have significant capacity to probably last a decade or more. In terms of payments that we've made the following payments for the period from June 1st to August 31st. Let's see, $731,684 to TCQ and $76,000 to Andrews County. That brings the totals since inception, and inception is 2012. So the total since inception, $77.2 million to TCQ and $17.4 million to Andrews. Now, I don't talk about it much, but what the TCQ money is used for is it's generally used to clean up uranium mines around the state. It really doesn't go to anything having to do with WCS or have any relationship to us. It cleans up uranium mines and other radiological activities around the state where they did not have adequate financial assurance in place. The $17.4 million that's gone to Andrews goes for various things that are for the good of the community. So they tend to go for recreational things or things for the public good, like a food pantry and so on. Those are all decided by a committee in Andrews. We have nothing to do with deciding where the money goes, but it all goes to public good in Andrews County. The total about $95 million to date. The payments that I discussed are not all inclusive. So it doesn't include recre waste fees, which we also pay, and we pay the same recre waste fees on top of the radiological charges that we pay, the same recre waste fees that any other facility in the state would pay. We reimburse TCEQ for their costs. So they send us a statement that says how much they cost to do business, and we pay that cost. And additionally, there's license and permit fees when you file a license or a permit or an amendment to a license or permit. We pay those as well. And that is all I have to report.
I have a couple of questions, Mr. Carlson, but let me first go to bat for our friends at TCQ. I want to make it clear, it was not TCQ's decision to use that money to clean up uranium. There was a political process that led to that, so it wasn't a unilateral decision by TCQ. But I do have a couple questions. I see the numbers for the first month. Historically, is that number pretty consistent over the months, or is there a surge at the beginning and then it kind of tapers off as the year goes on?
Yeah, we tend to see less in the wintertime because some parts of the country have worse weather in the wintertime. So it slows in the wintertime sometimes. Certainly some states, Minnesota won't even ship during the wintertime, simply because it's not appropriate on the roads.
Another question I've had is, and I think we talked about this before, and so I apologize. When it comes to capacity and what fills it up, I understand that obviously there's the waste. Is the capacity also eaten up by your fill process when you fill in voids between canisters and things like that?
So when I talk about capacity, I'm talking about waste capacity. So the actual airspace is multiples of what I'm talking about. So if I'm talking about 450,000 cubic feet of waste space, that could be 5 or 6 times that in terms of airspace.
And the last question I had is the renewal application for the permit, it's been submitted, but what is the timeline to your understanding from this point forward?
There is not a timeline that I'm aware of. I mean, TCEQ will get to that as they have the resources available to do it. We're in a position called timely renewal right now, so they could take 1 year, they could take 2 years, they could take 5 years. I'm sure with uranium mining, coming up in the States recently, they have plenty of workload, so I can't speak to how quickly they'll be able to get to it.
But as long as your application is pending, you continue to operate under the old.
In timely renewal, correct.
Any other questions, Mr. Carlson?
So I would just, under the timely renewal that you're in right now, so all the provisions under your current license continue to hold, there's no change while you're in timely renewal, correct?
That's correct. Now, there can be amendments that get approved, like there will be Amendment 40, which will allow us to remove from the federal waste facility, remove the landfill true waste to a surface facility in order to further evaluate that waste and get it shipped off to WIP. So things can happen during timely renewal, such as amendments. But yeah, everything remains in place. So basically what we submitted for our renewal was we took our original package that we submitted when the site was first granted the license. And then we incorporated all of the amendments that have updated that since then. And really, there's nothing new in the renewal that hasn't been either in the original license or in an amendment along the way. So it's, I suppose, old news, but it's all consolidated together.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sonic?
Understanding that we are not supposed to deal with high level waste, nonetheless, I get the feeling that there's been a lot of kind of back and forth and court, maybe not court stuff. I don't know whether there's been much court stuff, but there has with the NRC and whatnot. Can you just very briefly tell us where you stand on that? Where these areas stand?
I'm not a lawyer and I didn't bring one with me. My understanding is that certain parties are suing the NRC and the action is between those parties and the NRC. And my other understanding is that House Bill 7 in Texas prohibits spent fuel storage in the state of Texas.
So everything's kind of quiet other than some people suing the NRC.
I have nothing else.
Well, let's get out of it another way. Do you anticipate ultimately, Judge, kind of moving forward on trying to get high level waste there at the site or not? I mean, Faston was just spoken on this. And
there's legislation in the state of Texas that cannot happen. And we're in the state of Texas and we'll obey Texas law.
Any other questions for Mr. Carlson?
so Faston's concern is moot. It's I take it. Anyway, is that what you're saying? It ain't gonna happen?
I won't speak to that.
I think he just did. All right.
Any other questions?
Commissioner Bradford, it looks like Jasmine would like to say something.
Do you want to ask your question before or after they?
Well, mine's all.
Oh, okay, then Ms. Morales.
If I may add to this, WCS ISP filed as an intervener. They are very much a party to the action before the Fifth Circuit, and they're very much involved and well aware.
Can you just remind me how the payments to TCEQ and Andrews are determined? Are they volume based, revenue based?
Yeah, they're revenue based, so it's not a tax on profit, it's a tax on gross receipts. So the tax is 31.25% of gross receipts. So every dollar, 31.25 cents goes to either the state TCQ or Andrews County or to the Compact Commission.
I was gonna say, as a quick reminder, that is where that is indirectly where our funding comes from. It is put into a fund that is, then we get an appropriation from the state of Texas that, at least on paper, I mean, obviously mechanically it doesn't happen this way, but on paper, 1.25% of that charge is to cover our costs.
And how is it divided between TCEQ and Andrews?
Yeah, so 5% goes to Andrews, 5% goes to the Texas General Fund, 20% goes to the TCEQ's cleanup fund that's used for uranium mine and so on. And 1.25% goes for the operations of the Compact Commission.
And you'll hear them referred to by their fund numbers. I don't remember them off the top of my head, but there are fund numbers that you will hear it referred to that where the money goes. And I can't remember those numbers off the top of my head, but. And you'll also hear that uranium fund referred to as is it referred to as a perpetual care account? Yes.
It depends on where you see it, but I think that's one of the things they call it.
So it's given a couple of different names, but. Any other questions for Mr. Carlson?
I just wanted to clarify, Mr. Carlson, while you're up here, that's been mentioned the GTCC, that it might be coming to Texas, and there's discussion at the federal level about GTC being changed under the Part 61 rewrite, or the rules adjustment if that ever takes place about near surface disposal for GTCC. We had a discussion about that last week that you and I were both part of. Just where that's at, that is a discussion at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission about near surface disposal for GTCC.
So the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has been looking at Part 61 for over a decade. And they continue to look at what they're going to do to Part 61. Nothing they would do would change the fact that GTCC is a federal responsibility and would never be the responsibility of this commission.
And if they authorize the near surface disposal of it, could your federal facility be used for that?
Theoretically,
Because it is considered a DOE site, correct?
it is DOE and will transfer to DOE at the end of use, much like the Pantex plant already is DOE. It'll be like any other DOE. So
Any other questions? Mr. Carlson?
Was there a citation for this case? Maybe Ms. Morales, since you don't, aren't aware of it, but, Ms. Morales, is there? How can I look it up? Is there just can you give me the title?
It actually received a lot of national press coverage, but it came out on the Fifth Circuit, and I can send it to all of you.
I said you
I
a
think
copy of the
Stephen
regulation.
did it when it came up.
I'll resend to you, so that when it came out, I sent you the
Oh, you did, okay.
I'll resend it.
I don't, I figured it was irrelevant, so.
We'll have a quick session on how to use Google after this. For
The greater than class, the change in the regulation that DOE is considering right now, that was all started by a petition that came from WCS in 2014. That got this ball in motion.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Carlson. So with that, we're through item 5. The next item is item 6 in our agenda, which is the Rules Committee report. I will again applaud everyone on the Rules Committee for their diligent work. This is a process that's never really ended. And so as a result, it's turned into a lot of work. And Linda Morris, who's our chair, has really done diligent work, and everyone on the committee has. But with that, I will turn it over to Commissioner Morris for a quick report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Rules Committee continues to work on a draft rule revision for 31 Text 675.24, which we're simply referring to as the management rule. As you all know, we put forth a rule for consideration for adoption, but later withdrew it. So we continue to work on, we have a consultant that's working on one aspect of it, the economic impacts, and then the Rules Committee continues to tweak and make some changes in the draft rule itself. So I expect to have at our next meeting, can't promise. Depends on several factors, some external to the rules committee, regarding, the actual, draft rules. So hopefully be able to present more information, talk about some of the changes that are being made in the rule at our November meeting, hopefully. December, we're not doing November.
Perfect.
December, okay, yeah. Sorry.
Thank you very much.
I didn't want to make us have a November meeting. Thank you.
We appreciate that, and we have engaged an independent consultant to do the reports that are gonna be required in the rule. As Commissioner Morris mentioned, some of those issues on how long that will take are beyond our control, but it is our intention, come hell or high water, that we will see the rule through. And if that means we have to, reinvent the wheel, we will, but we believe this rule is very important, and we will have a rule passed at some point, even if we don't know exactly when it is. We are going to stay diligent about it. So we appreciate their work. The next item on the agenda is item 7, which is a contingency plan report. And I will turn it over to Commissioner Mundy, who is online with us. Good morning.
We have not met since the last meeting, so no new report.
Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is item 8, which is our capacity committee report. Let me introduce this by slightly disagreeing with what Mr. Carlton said. Our concern about capacity is one that is very similar to concern we had about curies at one point that led to our contingent curie program that has now led to our contingent capacity program. And that is simply the problem it creates in paper. We understand the capacity that's out there and the historical volumes that have come in, and we never thought that it was an actual capacity issue, but it did create one on paper, which, as Mr. Carlton pointed out, people are tending to use about 25% of the capacity that they request, which we've encouraged people to try to tighten up, and we hope they will. But in the meantime, we knew that the requests on paper were going to quickly outpace the capacity we had left. So we have created the contingent capacity program. I won't go through all the details about it, but kind of the bottom line is that if your total requested volume for the disposal year exceeds 2,500, then anything over 2,500 will be granted only on a contingent basis. Very similar to our contingent curie program, where you will simply have to, in a very informal way, ask the commission to confirm that there is adequate capacity there before you ship anything over 2,500. We will respond, I believe, within 72 hours to confirm, or if there's a problem, let you know that. But that way we have a bit of a check and balance, and we also address the issue that's been created on paper of there being more in requested volume than there is an actual volume available. We do not anticipate any kind of actual volume problem. And based on the timelines that WCS just reported, obviously all of this completely goes away in February when the new capacity comes online. But again, just to remove any doubt in anyone's mind, we do view the protection of capacity for our in-compact generators and our small quantity generators is our primary mission. So we are going to stay vigilant about this. We are going to be maybe even a little more proactive as we move forward, especially as we get to a point where there will be decisions made about operations at our in-compact nuclear power generation facilities. And ironically, this is dovetails with what Commissioner Mundy shares for us on contingency too, in that we will probably need to really think through the idea of what kind of capacity we need to reserve for potential contingencies, such as, and I say this in a hushed tone, if for some reason there was ever a problem at one of our nuclear power generation facilities, or if for some reason there was even a partial decommissioning, we need to make sure that we reserve adequate capacity for those potential events. And we're going to work on that. And as the new capacity comes online, it will alleviate really all of the pressure, at least for the time being, but we will continue to be vigilant about the capacity issue. So with that, let me also turn it over to Commissioner Edwards to provide us a capacity committee report as well. And you're still muted, Lisa.
had trouble finding my cursor. Nothing new to report, Chairman.
Thank you very much. With that, we are on to item 9, which is our import applications, and we only have 3 of them today. But we will start off with item 9A, which is the import application of PG&E at Diablo Canyon. And we'll turn it over to the chairman of our technical committee and who is also our vice chairman, Vice Chairman Sullivan, for his report.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The technical committee has received and reviewed an import application from Pacific Gas and Electric Diablo Canyon Power Plant. It was received August 22nd, 2023, and it's number 1-0412-00. In this case, Diablo Canyon is a generator requesting authorization to dispose of waste in accordance with the Act. And they have requested authorization for Class A and Class B unstable dewatered resin, dewatered activated carbon. And those waste streams were approved for disposal at the site via letter of correspondence from TCEQ dated September 28, 2023. Diablo Canyon has requested a volume of 357 cubic feet and a total radioactivity of 118 curies. This waste will originate from California, which is part of the Southwestern Compact, and does require export authorization. So that would need to be provided to the commission prior to any shipments. We received no comments on this application. And they have requested an agreement. Actually, they had a typographical error in their application regarding the dates, but they also indicated that they would desire a 1-year agreement with the termination date of August 31, 2024. The technical committee recommends approval, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the technical committee on the import application of PG&E Diablo Canyon? Hearing none, I think we can move on to a motion.
Make a motion to approve the import application from Diablo Canyon Power Plant, number 1-0412-00. The waste class is Class A and Class B. The waste form is unstable. Waste stream is dewatered resin and dewatered activated carbon. A volume of 357 cubic feet, radioactivity of 118 curies. They will be required to provide us copies of export authorizations from the Southwest Compact prior to any shipments. And the agreement would have a termination date of August 31, 2024.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion to second. Any further discussion about item 9A, the import application of PG&E Diablo Canyon? Any public comment on item 9A? And again, if you're online, please use your raise your hand function. Seeing none, I think we can move on to a vote. All in favor of the motion to approve the import application of PG&E Diablo Canyon represented in item 9A on our agenda, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion passes. We can now move on to item 9B, which is the import application of NAC Phylotechnics. And I'll turn it back over to Vice Chairman Sullivan.
The technical committee has received and reviewed an import application from NAC Phylotechnics Limited. It was received August 22nd, 2023, and it's number 1-0413-00. In this case, Phylotechnics is a broker who is a licensed waste collector and processor requesting authorization to dispose of waste in accordance with the Act. They've requested authorization for Class A, Class B, and Class C unstable domestic sealed sources, special form material, decommissioning sources, dry active waste, instruments and articles, debris, and other discarded radioactive material that is no longer used or wanted. Those waste streams were approved for disposal at the site via letter of correspondence from TCEQ dated September 28, 2023. Phylotechnics has requested a volume of 200 cubic feet and a total radioactivity of 100 curies. We received no comments on this import application. Phylotechnics has indicated the waste would be from all U.S. states and territories with the exception of Texas and Vermont. So any waste originating from the Northwest, Southwestern, or Rocky Mountain compacts will generally require an export authorization. And to date, Phylotechnics has not provided the export authorizations or generator authorizations, so those would have to be provided in advance of any shipments. They have indicated that the waste be from small quantity generators, and based on the requested volume, curies, and generator types, the commission concurs, so long as the waste does not originate from a nuclear utility. And they have requested an agreement with a one-year agreement with termination date of August 31, 2024. The technical committee recommends approval, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the technical committee on item 9B, the import application of NAC Phyllotechnics? Hearing none, we can move on to a motion.
I make a motion to approve the import application from NAC Phyllotechnics Limited, number 1-0413-00. The waste class is Class A, Class B, and Class C. The waste form is unstable. I'm not going to repeat the waste stream as indicated earlier. The volume is 200 cubic feet. The radioactivity is 100 curies. Any waste received from or to be shipped from the northwest, southwestern, or Rocky Mountain compacts will generally require export authorizations. We also need generator authorizations. Those documents will have to be provided to the commission administration in advance. This waste will be considered under the small quantity generator set aside, so long as it doesn't originate from a nuclear utility. And the agreement would have a termination date of August 31, 2024.
There's a motion. Is there a second? Second. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion about item 9B, the import application of NAC Phyllotechnics? John, I did have one question actually. So how do we determine, is it just based on their verification that none of the waste is coming from nuclear power?
We'll actually look at the generator authorizations that they send and confirm that nothing's from a nuclear power utility.
And to the extent, for some reason, if it was, will we just carve out that waste and say that's not small quantity, where the entire?
My opinion is it's a all or none.
Okay.
So if they decide to send waste from a nuclear utility, then we would move their application from small quantity generator set aside to a regular generator.
Thank you. I agree. Any other questions? Any public comment on item 9B? Seeing no hands raised, we will move on to a vote. All in favor of the motion to approve the import application of NAC Phyllotechnics, represented in item 9B on our agenda, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion passes. And I'm sorry, because I said there were 3 import applications. There's only 2, and there's 1 amendment. So the next item on our agenda is amendment request. And we have one of those from CNC Environmental. That is item 10A, and I will turn it back over to the vice chairman.
The technical committee has received an import amendment request from CNC Environmental, and that was received August 16, 2023. It's number 1-0385-01. And they have requested an amendment to increase the disposal request, or due to an increased disposal request from several of their DoD customers. That's the reason why they've asked for it. They've requested an additional 30 cubic feet and an additional 150 curies. There were no other changes requested, and the technical committee recommends approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
As a quick reminder, since sometimes amendments are a bit confusing, our amendment process is relatively informal. We ask that they send in a letter describing what they want to be amended. We also at one point passed into rule the opportunity for people to ask for a minor amendment, which does not require full commission approval, but those are limited to if there's an additional state in which waste is going to come from. There have been some discussion as of late about whether or not, if it's small volumes or small additional curies, could we do that under the minor amendment program? And we kind of drew a bright line that anytime there's a change to volume or curies, we think that has to come before the entire commission. Obviously, we'll continue to consider that as time moves on, but we think that those 2 things are fundamental enough that it should be part of the formal amendment process, not our minor amendment process is laid out in our rule. So with that, does anyone have any questions of the technical committee on the CNC environmental amendment request? Hearing none, I think we can move on to a motion.
Make a motion to approve the import amendment request from CNC Environmental. It's number 1-0385-01. And we would increase the volume by 30 cubic feet and increase the curies by 150.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion about the amendment request of CNC Environmental? Any public comment on item 10A? Hearing none, we can move on to a vote. All in favor of the motion to approve the amendment of CNC Environmental represented in item 10A on our agenda, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion passes. We are through the first 10 items on our agenda, and we've been going about an hour. So I think it would be nice to maybe take a 10-minute break, let everybody get a cup of coffee and go to the restroom. So it is now 9:11. So if everybody could be back in about 10 or 15 minutes, maybe by 9:25 or so, we will take a quick break and then we will be back. Okay, the time is 9:27 and we will call our meeting back to order. Thank you all for indulging us on a break. Before we move forward, Vice Chairman Sullivan wanted to make one thing clear that so the record accurately reflects some circumstances. So go ahead, John.
So I apologize. I want to correct the record. For the two import applications, PG&E, Diablo Canyon, and NAC Biotechnics, and for the import amendment request from CNC Environmental, we actually did receive comments from WCS supporting those. The comments we received were after the date that I actually did the technical review, which is why I didn't catch it when I made my when I had the discussion. So the record should reflect that we did receive comments.
Also, before we move on to item 11, which is my report, Commissioner Janeka has asked. Oh, I'm sorry, Lisa, did you have a question? Where do you go?
We can't hear you, Lisa.
Now I think you're muted.
You're muted now, or show us up.
Lisa, while you figure that out, I'm gonna ask Commissioner Janeka to join us. He wanted to clarify some of the earlier points about the amounts paid to TCQ and maybe their uses of an allocation. So I wanted to ask Commissioner Janeka if he could provide a little light on that issue.
Hi there. Thank you so much. I'm going to plow forward hoping people can hear this. This is Commissioner Bobby Janeka from TCEQ, and wanted to just respond and clarify an earlier comment from Dave Carlson, which I appreciate him making those points about the substantial revenue that WCS's activities have provided to the state. And as you alluded to, the state collections of those fees are deposited into a GR dedicated account, a dedicated general revenue account that was created in 2015 called the Environmental Radiation Perpetual Care Account, which is very close, differs by one single word in the name of another account that the state health department has for live use of radioactive material, site cleanup or remediation issues. And so that statute gives the state, with the authority carried by TCQ, the ability to clean up and remediate sites or impacts from licensees of TCQ. And Mr. Carlson mentioned uranium sites across the state being cleaned up. And really it's one site. The two properties at one point in time that were north and south sides of a highway project, to date, that's the only project that I'm aware of that's been eligible for any use of the funds out of the TCQ, the new perpetual care account, since it was created in 2015. And really that's been through specific appropriation by the legislature. Each of the last several sessions, some number of millions of dollars. The last session's budget had $3 million appropriated for the purpose in a rider for the TCEQ portion of the budget, the state budget bill. But I'm happy to report that that site receiving those funds has been cleaned up, and the NRC approved and certified that cleanup as of this year. August 2023 was the date, August 21st, that the NRC issued that final CRR, completion review report. I forget the exact acronym, but that's a very slow and infrequent milestone that occurs. So this site can now be released for unrestricted or partially restricted use per the terms of that site review, that site release. And so that's actually a really big success story that we so infrequently have the opportunity to talk about and share in Texas. I've gotten a nudge virtually through my TCEQ colleagues. It's unrestricted use. So that's even better, the best outcome we could hope for. And I know that a lot of those landowners had worked with the county judge and State Senator Judith Zaffarini to really advocate for and call attention and urgency to the cleanup of that site. Perhaps the state will be able to recover some of the funds and the costs that we used for cleaning up and obtaining release of the site from the owner. They're surprisingly a completely different business entity, works in television entertainment more notably now. So that's another story for another day. Hopefully, I'll leave it to future discussions by the attorneys. But I wanted to address that specifically. And
We're done.
It'll come to Vermont.
Commissioner Janek is muted now.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner Janek. I think we moved to that, but we appreciate your comments.
President, I wonder, since we've brought David back into the conversation, if I could ask him a question on a
Absolutely.
topic.
Mr. Carlson, would you come back for a moment? So I will also, this is back to obviously the WCS agenda item, but we're going to revisit it. So I'll turn it over to Commissioner Bradford for some questions.
Thanks. I'm sorry, this question just didn't occur to me until after you sat back down, but we've heard today about a commitment ostensibly made by WCS back some years ago to the effect that you wouldn't be interested in bringing high-level waste to the Andrews site. But we didn't give you a chance to respond as to what WCS's view of that ostensible commitment was, and I wondered if what the current WCS view is of whether such a commitment was made and what its status is today.
Yeah, I wasn't present for that, but the status today is, as I said, there's a law in Texas that says that it can't be done, and we'll follow the law.
Right, but if there were no such law, you don't think there's a commitment that would include it to? I guess not, because filed with that.
I can't speak to that. At the time that was put into motion, there was consent agreement locally as well as.
At the time that was, sorry, say that again.
When that application was submitted,
right,
there was certainly local support.
Thank you, Mr. Carlson. With that, we can get back to the next item on our agenda, which is Chairman's report. First, let me comment quickly that we are very proud that at the last low-level forum meeting, the keynote speaker was one of our very own, was Commissioner Bradford, who apparently gave a wonderful talk and everyone raved about it. So we are very proud of him and we appreciate the low-level forum asking Peter to do it, because his depth of knowledge really kind of is mind-boggling. He told me today he's been involved in the low-level nuclear waste market for over 50 years. So there's not many people in the world that can probably say that. So he has a wealth of knowledge that is second to none. But the other thing I wanted to do in connection with the low-level forum is one of the issues that came up at the last meeting involved the scatter program, which is a unique program that actually, I think, provides a lot of people some potential benefits that sometimes they don't know about. So I was gonna ask Dan Schrum, the executive director of the Louisville Forum, to come up and give us kind of just a high-level overview of Scatter and maybe some of the opportunities that exist with Scatter. As he walks up, I just want to let everyone know, I met Dan's wife this morning, and it's amazing because she obviously is a wonderful person. She's had one major lapse in judgment in her life. But other than that, I understand why people like Dan now, and it's because of his better half, so.
I think I'm supposed to thank you for that. Thank you for the opportunity. And first of all, I thought I was going to get the opportunity to thank Commissioner Bradford. We did get very good response from your keynote address. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed your candor. I really enjoyed the experience and depth that you brought to the meeting. So thank you again. And I know you did it at some personal sacrifice. You had a lot going on at home. So again, thank you for being in our meeting and for giving a very, very nice and well-received keynote address.
Thank you. It's good to know that there's an audience for all those old stories.
Yeah. And as I like to say, 50 years gone to waste. So the Scatter program. The Scatter program came out of a global threat reduction initiative where they identified that sealed sources were being misplaced, lost, or unaccounted for over a period of time. So sealed sources are used throughout in many, many industries. And a study was done and they assume that there are between 2 to 3 million sealed sources out among us at any given time.
Could you define what is a sealed source?
It is a source that is sealed.
But I mean, physically, is it truly encapsulated?
It's a small, extreme, highly radioactive material that is encased in something to protect it from exposure. So medical sealed sources are used all the time. They're exposed for a certain period of time to help radiation or not chemotherapy, radiation treatments. They expose. They can insert them into your person, like for thyroid issues, and they inject these little seed crystals that are sealed sources. They're used in radiography. They're used in well logging, use sealed sources. So they're just used all over the place. And what they found is that a lot of them were being unaccounted for. So the Scatter program was developed through the NNSA, which is a DOE organization, to help recover those sealed sources and dispose of them properly. So recently, the Scatter program has announced that they are going to increase their funding to 40%. They will contribute up to 40% for the disposal of a sealed source. If you need a cask or some other special shipping requirement, they'll reimburse up to 50%, which is it's the way it was before. And again, the goal is these are identified as potential threats to human health and environment. And so that's the program right now. To add to that, the Southeast Compact is also contributing for members of the Southeast Compact another up to 30% to help get rid of sealed sources in the Southeast Compact. So it's an ongoing, it's always been ongoing, but they've increased their contributions to up to 50% now.
Where does the Southeast Compact get that money?
That's a question for the Southeast Compact, but let's say that they were going to host a site and there were some lawsuits involved and they have some money that they can support this program.
And this really dovetails with something that Commissioner Mundy has brought up several times before, in that obviously we understand that the major interested parties in low-level disposal are things like the nuclear plants, but really something that we should never forget about and really provide as much support to as possible are people who aren't as well-funded and sophisticated as something like a nuclear power plant that has things like a sealed source. Because those people, we've all heard the horror stories of people storing it in closets and drawers, and it could really be a public health safety issue. And so things like the Scatter program are a wonderful opportunity to avoid that kind of scenario.
Correct. And there are brokers that are available that will help with disposal and packaging and transportation. And the Southeast Compact is actually working with an organization called Bionomics that will help put the sealed sources and get them sent off to a disposal facility. So,
And I'm sure
it's
this varies widely, but from a volume and curie perspective, what is the average volume and curie of a sealed source? I mean, can it be run the gamut, or is it
it
generally?
runs the complete gamut. So for example, Clive ran a pilot program. We disposed of 50,000 sealed sources in a single drum, and it was a couple of curies. Some of these can be hundreds of curies. An individual source can be hundreds of curies. It just depends on what they're being used for. But yeah,
I would add the size, because you asked about volume. The size of a typical seal source is very small, perhaps a steel cylinder that is maybe an inch or two in length, perhaps is an inch in diameter. So the size, the sealed source can be incredibly small, but the radioactivity contained in that can be very.
very. That's a great point. Another example is, I don't know if you followed what happened at the University of Washington, but they were removing a sealed source and they had a extraction error, putting it nicely. They were trying to size it, and that single sealed source did, I heard, over $100 million in environmental cleanup as they removed, it got into the vent system and things like that. So high liability, high risk, we need to make sure that they're disposed of. And through the CRCPD and the NNSA, the scatter program is really designed to help get these, if they're not being used, let's get them disposed of properly, and they can be disposed of at the WCS facility. Okay.
No, I want to add that, actually, my institution I represented for years, it's a small generator. We use scattered funds to clean out the closet, so to speak. And it's very helpful to have that money, and the administration loves it too, and somebody else is helping pick up the tab. So that was great. But you're right, and then initially the program offered 50%. As time went by, 40, because they were trying, and then 30. They were trying to encourage people to hurry up and do it before it dropped too low. So it's very nice to recently learn that 30% is going back up to 40%. So that's great news.
Right.
Any other questions?
I guess the other part I would add, the back end of that is, which is why we have the small quantity generator set aside, which primarily we award, if you will, to brokers who are in many cases handling these sealed sources that are unwanted. So we want to make sure that those brokers have access for disposal at WCS, as opposed to a large quantity generator from a nuclear power facility. You would say, in essence, we guarantee that the broker will always have the ability to dispose of these unwanted sources.
So any questions about the scatter program from anybody on the commission or anybody in the audience? I think this is important, and I'm glad we can, when I say we, I really mean Dan, provide this kind of information to everyone, because I hope it's something that, to the extent there are people out there that have these kind of sources who really don't understand what to do with them, this is a pathway to really help them get it done, and using brokers and maybe deferring some of the costs that they probably otherwise dread to incur. So
I appreciate that. And it's part of the mission of the forum with our district source working group, which is a group of people that get together and discuss sealed source issues throughout the United States, proper disposal, and also helping set policy to make sure that sealed sources are accounted for and disposed of properly.
thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
I wanted to plug you while you're here. We're talking about the GTCC issue, and you're tracking that. The forum is tracking what's going on at Part 61. Rulemaking, you have a working group.
We are, because it's part of Part 61. That is correct. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
When's the next forum meeting?
The next forum meeting is April 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in Orlando, Florida.
Thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you.
So the other part of my report is a legislative update. Is anyone who follows the legislature knows there's been a third call special session. There's nothing on the call that would suggest it has anything to do with us. We will continue to monitor it. Although it seems like an eon away, there is another legislative session coming up. We will be analyzing any of our potential legislative needs. One of the issues we have discussed in the past with certain members of the legislature relates to our ability to enforce our rules. And we will possibly be looking at a legislative change for that, because we want to make sure that we have the ability to enforce our rules when they're violated. And so we will be taking a very close look at that from a legislative perspective. Obviously, the other thing that we're always looking at is our budget. We're very thankful for the appropriation we get, and we recently passed our budget, I believe, at the last meeting. But we will always be watching that as well. We are very conscientious of the way we spend our money, but we also know that we need enough to operate, because in a lot of ways our operations continue to expand and get more sophisticated. So, any questions about legislative updates? Hearing none, we can move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item 12, which is the executive director's report.
And I was going to report to you commissioners on our contingent volume program. We surprisingly are already utilizing that program. We've had several disposals already that have gone over that 2,500 cubic foot limit. And we set up good process to take in place. We had a online meeting with all of the folks that were the affected parties by agreement for that. Tech has actually disclosed several times, just for everybody's information, and a couple of those have asked so far. We've set up an email program where they have email administration, Chairman Hurley, Vice Chairman Salzman, and Megan and myself. And I think so far everything's going smoothly. We've had 6 different disposals under that so far. So if you have any questions about that or how that's moving, be happy to answer them.
And as we said, that contingent volume program will hopefully go away as soon as the new cell or the expanded cell is ready. So it may be a short-term program, but like I said, our watching the volume issues will be something we do in perpetuity. So if it's not the contingent volume program, we will continue to watch volume as the operations continue. Any questions about the contingent volume program? The next to last item on the agenda is future meetings. And usually this is perfunctory, but I actually have a request of the commissioners on this one. We may have a need for a very short one agenda item meeting to pass an amendment for someone who has some pressing needs in early November. So if you would, and we believe what we would do is have John chair that meeting in Austin, because the requirement is that the person chairing the meeting be in the physical location of the meeting, and then the rest of us appear via Zoom. So we wouldn't have to actually physically travel to Austin. But if you would, please look at your schedules and get back to Megan and Stephen really as quickly as possible, but at least by early next week, letting us know what your availability is for maybe the 1st, and if needed, 2nd week of November. And we will try to schedule that. And like I said, I believe it'll be less than half an hour, but it's something that we need to do to help out someone who needs an amendment based on their shipping schedule. So we would like to do that and accommodate them as best we can. Other than that, our next regularly scheduled meeting is in December 14th in Austin. Normally I say there's a good chance we wouldn't have our December meeting this year because of the rule issues that Commissioner Morris brought up earlier. I think it is for sure we will have that December meeting. Then we will have our break for the holidays and come back in February again in Austin. And then looking long term, May 9th is our trip to the South Texas project, which is in Bay City. So that will be another one that we will communicate with everybody about on travel arrangements and where we can all stay and where we're having the meeting. That one will be very interesting, and I hope everybody can attend, because this will be the first time, I believe, we've ever been to South Texas. And we recently toured Comanche Peak, so this will be an opportunity to tour South Texas, our other power plant. There was a question online from an anonymous attendee that said, what is a contingent volume program at 2,500 cubic feet? This is the program that I mentioned earlier, that based on mere paper concerns, meaning the requested volume on paper that people have asked for an import authorization, gets close to or potentially exceeds the remaining volume in the current cell. We created a contingent volume program that said anyone who is going to dispose of more than 2,500 cubic feet has to first get our authorization. And what we do is there's an email very simple email that they send in saying, we're prepared to send shipment that exceeds that exceeds in total 2,500 cubic feet for the year. And we then check the existing volume and say, yes, there is capacity, or no, there isn't. The whole theory behind it is that we need one last control point in the unlikely event, which we believe will never happen, that we run into a capacity problem. We need the ability to basically shut it off. We don't expect to get there, but because of the requests on paper, we feel like we need to have this in place, just because there is a potential, even if it's infinitesimal, that we could literally have more requests to dispose of than there is capacity. And like I said, we think it's only on paper. It's the same thing we did really with the security allocations that we've run into in the past, because it's the same problem. But it has worked fine. And again, once the new capacity comes online in February, we think that entire issue will go away, because there'll be more than enough capacity, and we won't have the paper problem that I just mentioned. So I hope that describes the contingent volume program. And if anybody has any questions, obviously feel free to contact us through our administration email address, or call the office. We can address that. Any questions about our future meeting dates?
Did you want, like, early November? Are you gonna stick to Thursdays, or?
No, I think we can do any day of the week on this, because it literally, like I said, it can be morning, it can be afternoon. We just wanna, and like I said, I think it's 30 minutes at most. So it's anytime you're available, really after probably November 2nd, because there's a timeline that we have to have, that the amendment has to be pending for public comment before it's right for consideration. So I think that starts on November 2nd. As I always say too, all of our future meetings are contingent on the need to meet. We will not meet just to meet. If we don't have business, like I said, I'm pretty sure we will on December 14th, but after that, if for some reason we don't have enough business to justify meeting in February, then we won't. But we obviously will probably make the trip in May to South Texas. So that one's probably in concrete as well. Any questions about future meetings?
There's one flying to San Antonio.
Probably Houston, I would think.
It's certainly closer to Houston.
And it's still, how far outside Houston is it? An hour maybe?
Probably an hour. About an hour. Flight.
Yeah, hour and
There's two Houston airports. Hobby's probably closer, isn't it? The Hobby Airport is probably closer.
So with that, we're through with item 13 on the agenda. The last item on the agenda is adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And before we adjourn, please let me reiterate once more, we so appreciate the hospitality of Vermont. Like I said, you may have to chase some of us out of here because we like it so much. It is always a highlight of our year, and we love the change in scenery and the change in weather and the change in leaves and everything. So there's a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor indicate so by saying aye.
All right.
Thank you all very much.
Looks like it is.
Yeah, sound is, briefly. See, you haven't been down to the waterfront.